questions later. I don't know, but it was fun. So get back here. So I'm gonna start off. Like I said, I was getting called up. When I was getting called up on everything from. I think we started the first half of chapter 5 last week, and as I was looking, and I always kind of find a title, but as I was looking at the second half here for verses 17 through 31, I was reminded of the years of youth, back in the days of growing up, when you wake up on Saturday morning to watch cartoons and kind of hang out. I remember getting upset a few times because I overslept this Bugs Bunny Roadrunner hour. But you went here and watched Rocky and Bullwinkle growing up? The Adventures. Yeah, I low-key like Rocky and Bullwinkle. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And I'll go in. I always do. I do a Bullwinkle. I'm not.
You just do it.
What's that?
Do it.
My Bullwinkle impersonation.
Yeah.
Hey, Rocky, got nothing up to sleep. Presto. Sometimes, anyway, I do it. Kids love that class too. Then you got Boris and Natasha. Moose and squirrel. Moose and squirrel. But anyway, I was reminded of that because when I was coming up with a title, every time they would start an episode, they'd be two. They would come up with today's episode, so and so, or so and so. And that's kind of what I thought of today, because today's title of the lesson is "The Writing is on the Wall" or "Your Number is Up." That's kind of what I felt like with reading this. But anyway, like I said, got to revisit Bullwinkle, Rocky. I think Fred used to do Rocky, didn't you? You're not going to do Rocky? Oh, come on. But anyway. I forgot all the little catch lines now. I just have about 3 or 4. Anyway. But yeah, always good to revisit the childhood there when you get a chance. But as I said, kind of getting into the lesson here and get serious. I want you to think about a couple of things here. First of all, probably throughout in the Old Testament, who are individuals that God used in the New Testament to? We see many examples. So get your mind thinking here. For example, God used for His purposes.
In which Testament?
Either Old Testament. We'll lean towards that first, but
Moses in the Old
start out with Moses right there, right? Yeah. Yeah. Any others? Lots of them. I always like the story of Joseph. I always keep that in mind when I feel like if I feel like I've been done wronged or something. I always remember, and Joseph had the ultimate wrong done to him, but look how, God, when it looks like it's at the lowest, God turned out to make it pretty good for him, didn't he? Others? Put you on the spot here, didn't I? It's one of those there when we start naming names. David. Noah. Any others that you can think of? Isaiah. So you're going to start listing. So the key here is individuals, right? So I guess the thing here is, I like this little thing from here. It says, God doesn't often use committees or large groups to do His greatest works, does He? He just finds one person that's totally committed to Him, and then God works powerfully through that person to accomplish what He desires. When you think about that, like I said, so I guess sometimes when you feel, I'm just one person, or I'm just one insignificant person here on this earth, it's all God needs. Just one person that believes in Him and committed to Him. So it just a total person that's totally committed to Him, and God works powerfully through them to accomplish what He desires. When God's people seem weak and ineffective, the problem is never God's ability, but the availability of one woman or one man through whom he will demonstrate his power. Never underestimate the influence of one godly life. And even today, you see, like I said, we see examples all the time. And that kind of struck home to me because, as I said, just one person in this world, and I laugh because in the position I don't know, anyone here ever been to a job interview that was a committee? Yeah. What was y'all's thoughts on that?
I was intimidated.
Is intimidated?
Yeah.
It's bad enough with one person, but with three or four.
You gotta go in there. Oh man, come on. I get it, and a lot of times I'll just take it from my standpoint, and I'm all about people being involved. But when you're interviewing for a head football job or something, there are a lot of people in there. I'm just sitting there going, let's see. I was probably booster club parent, so. I'm just like, don't know. Probably most of them don't know the difference between clothesline and go run. But and I get it. There's other things involved. I joke around a little bit, but I think that's something right there. Hopefully, it keeps you in mind. It just takes one godly life, one person committed to God, and He can use us. He can use us for great, powerful purposes. And so I just found out there's not really related to, we see that with Daniel, of course, but and then finally, kind of getting into this, and then we'll because I really don't have anything. It's just the same stuff leading again over and over about. We're seeing a theme in this book so far, but I want you to think about this when a person that has the most influence on you. Now, when that question is asked, just think about that for a second. Then I'll go, who is a person that has the most influence on you? You don't have to answer. Just think about that. You can say it if you want to share. Feel free to. I think hopefully for me it starts with mom and dad and going from there. I got a lot of people in my life, especially growing up, teachers, coaches, even friends, and then here's the thought that in this book I'm reading that says what one person has the most influence on you. And most of the time we think of positive influence there, but it's just something to think about. Has that influence been positive or negative? So, that can go both ways. The person has the most influence, it can be negative. So, and I want to, we can tie that in here with Daniel as we kind of continue in right here and here in chapter 5. So, as we are going right here, as it opens, just kind of rehashing last week, and I assume I'm just going to go based on what I read on that. I don't know which direction you went with. I'm sure it's a lot deeper than the one I go with. But the thing we got to remember, Daniel's 80 years old now. When we started this chapter, or around 80, that's what it's guessed. When we started this chapter, he was a young man with Nebuchadnezzar. So time has marched on, and the successors to Nebuchadnezzar's throne have basically ignored him. And it got me, and again, I'm getting into a lot of things here. You ever had that boss you just love, and he's the greatest boss, and man, he's awesome, and he takes a job or retires, and the person comes in, it's like the 180. I see a lot of heads nodding right there. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention the movie because it's but I just remember there's like the same thing. The guy loved his boss, had it as basically, making him, hey, he's going to be the successor one day. He's going to take over the company, and then the boss suddenly passes away, and his son comes in, and the son is like maybe the reincarnation of Satan. He's, it's just total opposite of what this guy is, and stuff. And that's kind of what that's kind of what made me think of when I read the account here of Belshazzar. Again, the other thing I like about the Old Testament is how easy the names are. Moses, let's start out. You got Adam and Eve, Moses, Noah, and then all of a sudden we get into some of these other names. Nebuchadnezzar. I still can't spell. I still can't spell it right on the computer. But that's kind of what we're getting right here. So I think we're all familiar with this, and we kind of understand what Daniel's going through. But you know, he's been shuffled off to some, it says here, he's probably been shuffled off to some obscure office in the Babylonian bureaucracy. But when the king finds himself in trouble, he calls him God's man again. So we keep seeing a reoccurring theme here. So kind of just as we get into verse 17 right here of chapter 5, it says, Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself and give thy rewards to another. So what we got right here, so let me just catch on up right here. I think you said that Belshazzar, you know, they're partying it up, man. He's having a good time, but he's mocking God. He's you know, we think about it. What were some of the things last week that we saw that? What I mean, besides just you know, the obvious right there, but what was the big thing? What was we'd say the biggest issues that were going on? Well, they were drinking wine from what? From the vessels from the temple. They were desecrating, sacrilege, blasphemous, just all those different things. And then I don't know if you brought this up, but then I didn't realize that the writings on the wall actually comes from this passage. That colloquialism, hey, the writings on the wall, actually came from this passage. I didn't know that. And there's the thing I've noticed, there's a lot of those little colloquialisms that we use that go back to the Bible. So I thought that was really neat. But can you imagine just a hand appearing out of nowhere and writing on the wall? Get my attention. And, so we see that, and they write these. I think there's 4 total words written on the wall, and now same thing. They call in all their astrologers. I guess astronomers are actually truly, it's the astrologers that are, but all their scribes. Hey, we need to interpret this, and same old song and dance. They can't do it. So guess who? I think it's is it Belshazzar's mom or is it grandmother? The queen mother is what it first says. Basically, hey, I know someone that could probably take care of this. And they call old Daniel in. And so this is Daniel's 3rd time, right? So in verse 17 it says, Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. So as we get to it right here, basically Belshazzar, he's offered nice clothing and a position of power. Basically, you can be 3rd in command right here for doing this. And so a lot of enticement right there. But Daniel says in verse 17, basically keep your gifts. I'm still going to interpret it, but you can keep it right there. So this is Daniel's 3rd time to interpret the meaning of the messages sent to Babylonian rulers. You know, what point is, at this point, what point is Daniel trying to make here? When I say what point is Daniel trying to make in his book, this is the 3rd time he's brought this, that he has decided that this is worth sharing.
He's just telling me he's gonna do what's right without having reward.
Yeah, I'm going to do the right thing without the reward. And he's also seeing this, that, you can have all these, soothsayers, whatever you want. My ADD is all over the place today because don't shake your head. But I was is this being filmed? Jeff, is this being filmed? Hit pause. I was in a musical in college. Some of my well-roundedness, because remember, if you're not well-rounded, that means you're a square and you got sharp edges. And I can remember, it's called Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And there was it was set in Greek time for whatever, and I think I was a protean or something. I wouldn't have a main part of that talented. That's one of the soldiers, but I could remember there was a guy that played the soothsayer, and it was like everybody was talking, and I think one of my lines was, "Everybody be quiet so you can say the sooth." Anyway, that's anytime I hear soothsayer, I see that, I think about it. But getting back to the point here, seriously, and so all those, what he's saying right here, you can have all these things, but Daniel, what's Daniel got that they don't have? What's he got going for him? God. He's he's a man of the true living God. Capital G-O-D. As I say that, all these Old Testament, the idols and stuff. You know, their gods were little g, because they were not real. So he has that, and I think that's the point, was, you know, he wasn't the young boy guy he was. He's 80 years old. And so it kind of gets, and then Ms. Dixon right here kind of gets into it as well. Why would Daniel spurn the gifts he was offered? There's a lot of reasons right here. He wasn't in it for the reward. And on page 139, I think they're in our book, here it talks about, it says down there under 5:17, it says, Daniel responded by asking the king to keep his gifts for himself and to give rewards to another. And it kind of, gives you some examples. And down there at the bottom it says, it is not wise to receive gifts from unworthy leaders for services rendered to them. It says, see 2 Kings 5:15 and 16. So I'm going to look that up right here real quick. There's 1 Kings, 2 Kings 5, and what was it again? 15 and 16. Let's just see what that has to say about this. I waited for it for the surprise. 15 and 16. (15 16), right? And he returned to the man of God, and he and all his company came and stood before him, and he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. So it kind of, so the book's kind of referencing that right there. And, and I think there's a lot, you could probably go teach a lesson off that as well, about receiving, receiving gifts and stuff. But Daniel had never been motivated or impressed by material awards. He was more interested in doing what was right. He was not trying to be disrespectful, but just remain true to his principles. And I like the last sentence right there, because Daniel, you probably knew this anyway. Hey, I'm gonna offer you, it's kind of like, it's basically like this. Hey, Scott, we're gonna offer you the CEO of the company, but we're shutting the company down tomorrow. Great, that's gonna help me out. Because that's what was basically happening. We offered third in command of the Babylonian Empire here. Well, what's about to happen to it? It's about to fall. So Daniel knew, hey, it's probably worth this anyway. We're going to hit on that again. So Daniel spurned the gifts, and again, he's just showing who he is as a person, and again, and the reward itself wasn't going to be worth much anyway, because as we're going to see, the time was running out on the Babylonian on their empire. So verses 18 and 19, as we read those, it says, O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and a majesty and a glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he would slew, and whom he would have kept alive, and whom he would set up, and whom he would put down. So I want you, before we get into this, move back up. Let's go to verse 13 in this chapter. Move back up to verse 13. So we got Belshazzar right here. This is after Daniel has been called, and he will show the interpretation. It says, verse 12. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father... Yeah, I'm sitting there wondering. You think about that. Verse 13. Belshazzar kind of giving Daniel a little jab right there with it. Yeah, everybody talks good about you, but you are one of them captives, aren't you? Kind of trying to set Daniel in his place. And I like what Daniel does right here. And it may not be. This is just, Scott's thought here. But he goes, I want to interpret this to you because it's from the Most High God. So he's kind of giving it, he might have been giving it back because you got to think. I wonder how, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I kind of like how, and again, I'm guilty. I get guilty of it. I have to remember this, but I like how God deals with prideful people. eventually, and sometimes I'm not patient enough to let him take care of it. But so, why do you think Daniel uses the phrase "Most High God"? I kind of got into it right there a little bit. I mean, that was my thoughts. He wanted. Why would he say that? Because he was just asked for interpretation. What y'all think? Again, y'all are getting me trained for classes when I start asking questions. Met with silence. Yeah.
I think you already answered it.
Yeah, I did. I do. I'm bad to do that sometimes. Wrong question, but yeah, that I think, like I said, he just wanted him to let him know, hey, this is from the Most High God. But you know, and then we get right there. So, and I think also, you know, we see what are some of the details here of Nebuchadnezzar's reign that Daniel gives. You know, he basically recounts Nebuchadnezzar's kind of reign right there, don't he? A little bit. Hey, you know that he gave him, you know, glory, he gave him honor, gave him that power, but he was reminding them who is the source of all that power. At the end of the day, it was God. God's sovereign. And he's letting them know that. So, if when he goes into this detail of, because you got to remember, Belshazzar, what was his relationship to Nebuchadnezzar? Yeah, I think grandson. Is that right? So it was his grandson, and again, I'm not saying this is just, you know, as I try to remember, everybody in the Bible are just as flawed human beings as I am when it gets down to it. But what do you think, when Daniel starts going back into Nebuchadnezzar's reign and stuff, what do you think Belshazzar's reaction might have been?
He was different.
Yeah.
So he would not have been happy with.
Yeah, because you got to think. I think that's the first time Belshazzar's heard that recounting of his grandfather's kingdom. You know, kind of like, here we go again. Yeah, all right, yeah. Granddad was great. I get it. You know, that's probably how prideful he was. You know, if you think of it. You ever met anybody like that? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I get it. You know, it's just. But that might have been his reaction. So he's giving them those details, and I think right there, Daniel's putting him back in his place, because at the end of the day, he's letting them know it's not you, it wasn't your grandfather, it wasn't all about him. It was just God's sovereignty. And so we get to 20 through 24 right here, and we see again. I got this one entitled, like I said, that first section right there, those first three verses. I said third time's the charm right there. So the third time Daniel's been called in to interpret. Now we're going to repeat some past mistakes right here. And that question I just asked was, do you think Daniel was given a friendly warning to Belshazzar by recounting what happened to Nebuchadnezzar for not recognizing God? Do you feel Belshazzar took it this way? You know, and that's what I got. How would you describe, if you had to just take a guess here, at the relationship Daniel had with Nebuchadnezzar compared to what he had with Belshazzar? Again, if I'm butchering my name, I apologize. Yeah. Daniel, like I said, I don't know what the right term is, but he did have some type of, would you have to agree he did have a relationship with Nebuchadnezzar? You know, that somehow, again, I can't.
He's sort of been putting out to pasture.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad way to put it.
Kings and rulers.
Yeah.
They hadn't paid much attention. They had switched their views or values from what Nebuchadnezzar.
Sure.
They were trying to do the opposite. Like
Yeah.
some of the leaders, they come in and say, I'm not so and so, we're changing.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think you make a great point there, sir. It's like, because remember, when we left chapter 4, what had happened to Nebuchadnezzar? What was he doing by the time we get into chapter 4? He just, he'd come out of that 70 years where he had to live, basically, of insanity, living as a beast. And he'd come out, because I think the terms was, he's going to stay that way until he knew who the high God, recognized the high God. I don't have a quote. So now we see what's going on here after that with Nebuchadnezzar being out of the picture. They've kind of reverted back to the old ways, if not worse. And I was just sitting there thinking, I think put out the pasture, they probably said, Dan, you just kind of do your thing over here. We got this, you know. And I kind of laughed, you know. And again, we are all, you know, we all have our personal, you know, everybody has their different experiences right here. But if we all sat down and shared them, they're the same. It's kind of like being a coach, especially college coach. I'm around all the young guys and stuff right here. But you know, it's like, Scott, you're kind of old. You kind of, you know. But you know what? When there's a problem come up, when it really gets down, who do they come to? They come to the OGs, you know, the old guys. That's what OG stands for, old guys. But, you know, at the end of the day, they come seeking that wisdom, right? And that's what they did with Daniel. So, but, you know, I don't think Daniel was giving him friendly warning. I don't think it was, if you remember, I don't know. To me, it just, the tone, I think the tone was different here than it was with Nebuchadnezzar. You know, I think, I don't know if concern's the word, but Daniel had some, you know, there was a concern, I guess, because if you remember when he was reading Nebuchadnezzar, that Daniel pleaded with him to, hey, all you got to do to make this right is be right, you know, is to repent. You know, again, I'm paraphrasing those because all this comes in. Do we see that with Daniel right here with Belshazzar? He's just giving him straight facts. He's not saying, hey, you can fix this. Maybe it was to the point Daniel knew it wasn't fixed. I don't know. But we just see there's definitely a difference in the relationship right here. So, and, you know, do you feel that, you know, did Belshazzar, you know, take it that way? Well, who knows? And, you know, what Daniel is sharing right here, as let's read the verses here first so we kind of have some background here. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne. And they took his glory from him. And again, this is Daniel continuing on about Nebuchadnezzar. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild asses, and they fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will. And thou his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thy heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. So we see Daniel here again. He gives him the warning. You don't see him pleading, you can make this right. He just tells him, pretty much, hey, you've messed up. Because I think, you know, when you see this, you think about it, what he's doing, what Belshazzar is doing is bad anyway. What makes it even worse? One of those questions that's not written down. Why is this even worse? He says it, you know, he kind of says it right there, Daniel does. Verse 22.
What's the question?
Why, I mean, it's bad enough what Belshazzar is doing with the wine and all that, the partying. Why is it even worse? What multiplies this even, that makes it even worse than what it is?
He knew all that.
What's that?
He knew all that.
He knew all that. Yeah, he knew. And still. So like I said, so basically if you had to sum that up, he was presented the truth of God and still rejected it. Do we have people with that today? Sure. Yeah. They are told, they are told about Jesus, they still reject it. And unfortunately, is there a consequence for that action? Yeah, and we're going to see it right here that Belshazzar sees it, and it applies today. So I said right there, 2 Thessalonians, and we go to the New Testament right here, and what we see is we're going to see Paul, and then we're going to go to John right here. So 2 Thessalonians. Okay, that's one. We got. Go ahead. Somebody read it right there.
Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they may be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness.
All right. And then in verse 5, John 5:43, it says, this is Jesus speaking, I am come in my Father's name, and ye receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will should receive. So if you don't believe the truth, you're going to believe a what? You're going to believe a lie. You know. So that, I think our book, our book kind of references those. So what's Daniel sharing to Belshazzar right here? Belshazzar is basic principle God operates on. Either accept, you're going to accept my truth or reject it. And if you reject it, then you're going to accept the lie. So, so we go right here, we continue on. As we continue, we see right here in verse 23, we see Belshazzar's sin. What are some insights what are some of the insights in the nature of Belshazzar's sin? In other words, so it's just, what do we see right there? I mean, and I've hit on it a lot, I've answered a lot, that's my bad things. I get going and answer questions already, but, just, I guess, let me rephrase this. What are some characteristics we see about Belshazzar here based on the sins that we see listed by Daniel? If you had to describe Belshazzar, again, right? Top person you want to hang out with? Besides the evil he's doing, it sounds like he's, just arrogant, cocky, and what are some other things? I mean, there's no right or wrong answers here, folks. So, I'm not going to take off points. You don't have to give me an exit slip or anything. Except me if I get back into teaching. Arrogance, pride, a little narcissism, maybe. You think he's a little self-centered? And then some of the nation, like I said, sacrilege. He's desecrating the vessels of God, the blasphemy, and like I said, just just not a very good human being. It just doesn't sound like.
It's kind of shallow.
Very shallow, yeah.
And just go, easy come, easy go, go along to be part of the labor of Christ.
There you go. And I'm glad that we as humans have come about now that here in the year 2000, I'm not sure of the time frame, how many years it's been since this happened, but we're better. We don't have people like that anymore, do we? That's as I studied the Bible more, that's the thing that's kind of revealed to me is it's just like I think a lot of people are the same. We're still the same people. And in a way it's sad, but in a way it also gives me comfort that, I'm flawed, I admit it, and God's dealt with flawed people as Adam and Eve, so I get a good, I guess a weird, maybe I'm horrible, but maybe not as horrible as I think it's just wait. Anyway, so Daniel reveals in verse 24, and again, let's go back to it. Let's think about what he's been experiencing. Hey, I need this to interpret. I don't know. And again, I wasn't here last week, but how would you? Do you think it was more like a hologram hand or an actual hand that was?
Either way.
Would it be? I might not have survived that. but that's, man, I can experience that, and then, and I guess, same way, it's just like witnessing Jesus' miracles and still not believing. I don't get that, but, I would, we may look, who knows, but yeah, that'd be scary. And so he tells them, hey, that hand and what it was written was from God. So let's take a look here in the next little section. The writing is on the wall right here. And give you a little bit of a history lesson right here. It says the words written on the wall were Aramaic words. Aramaic, I guess I said, again, I'm struggling with all pronunciations. But they don't have little pronunciation guys, I struggle. Anyone know anything about Aramaic that may not have doctorates in this? All right, I'll give you, like I said, I researched it, so I don't make myself sound smart here, but I just researched this last night. It's an ancient Semitic language that was a major, here's another word for you, lingua franca in the Near East. You want to know what lingua, L-I-N-G-U-A, franca is? I thought a law person might know that.
Well, it sounds Latin.
Yeah. I can make up a lot of words that sound Latin. For example. It is dealing with language. A lingua franca, is that how I pronounce it? Anyway, I found this. This is if you were in my chemistry class and stuff, this is the stuff I tell them. This is free right here. This is not even part, so you get to and learn something. Anyone here ever been in an international airport outside the United States? Monica, where? I'll pick on you a little bit. Where at? Madrid. Ah. Tell me about the airport signs. What language?
Spanish.
Spanish, all of it? No English?
Yes.
There was English?
There was some English.
Okay, there was English and Spanish. Anyone else been to a different country? Paris.
Same thing.
It's English and French, right?
Yes. But
So-
I remember how proud you were.
I guess probably Charles de Gaulle Airport. I guess I figured it's probably ranks up there one of the biggest. All right. Yeah. English is what's called a franco-lingua of airports international. That means it's a common language that is spoken between two people. It's just the agreed upon, hey, we're from one country, you're from another. This is the language we're going to use. And Aramaic was a trade, because the trade in the Near East at the time, that was just the agreed upon language. And we'll get to that. Just some other examples. The Olympics, for example. The Olympics have two official languages. Anyone know what they are?
Since there's-
Greek would be a great guess, but that's not it. You're going to be surprised. French is one. English is the other. And if you'll sit there next time the Olympics are on, I guess maybe I think the Winter Olympics are next year. If you'll kind of listen to the background to the public address when he is speaking, you'll hear him say something in English and he'll follow up with French. That's the official language. Why the French? I don't know. And then finally, the other thing I have down notes here is international air traffic control. The lingua franca is English. So that's just the agreed upon. So, if you're a pilot from another country and you're about to try to land a plane or something, what's he saying? So it's English is the agreed. That's what that is. So anyway, getting back to it right here, in the trade, Aramaic it's a Semitic language. Some other Semitic languages, it says, is a family. It's just a family of languages and people that speak them. And believe it or not, I actually have the definition of lingua franca. But anyway, Arabic and Hebrew are also fall under the same category as it's Arabic or Aramaic right here. So it leads me to my question here. Again, one of those that's not on. Why do you think Aramaic was the choice of Why was that the language that was written on the wall?
So long as most everybody would understand it.
So it was, it would be one, like I said, it'd be one they most understood right there. So, and the things, that's, just the attention to detail, man, it just amazes me. But, so he knew everybody that saw that, there would be no doubt what was being read. So let's take a look. We got many, many, and that's translated as numbered. And, you know, I have down there, why repeat these two words? You ever notice anytime something's repeated in the Bible, what's that mean? Hey, verily, verily, truly, truly. Anytime you see that, you know, so I'm not sure. So basically he's saying here, hey, your days are numbered. And I even looked that up. I was like, I wonder if the saying days are numbered comes back from that, but it didn't. Tekel is translated weighted or assessed. So let me kind of read 25 to 28 right here before we get. And this is the writing that it was written, many, many. Tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the theme. Many. God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in balances and art found wanting. That's key there. And Perez, I guess, thy kingdom is divided and given to Medes and the Persians. If you'll notice right there, the last word of 25, upharsin, and period is right there in the translation. All that is upharsin is, and again, that's probably however you pronounce that, but that's a plural version of periods for the word for division. So we get that, and you know, we see right there, let's look at the word talking about Tekel, basically, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. So, God has weighed, pretty much put their life right there, and they're significantly lacking, aren't they? Now, for us today, weighed in balances and art found wanting, what would that mean to us today? Not good enough. Romans 3:23, right? All have sinned and found, and like I said, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory, right? So we are all sinners. We are art found wanting. But we got a way to be where we balance that scale back up. And how's that scale balance back up where we can now meet the standard? Can we meet the standard person? Nope. Blood of Jesus Christ, right? That's the only what. And it kind of saying what? Belshazzar, he rejected God's truth. If we reject Jesus, we're rejecting God's truth. And that's the fact that, you know, there's nothing that we can do to earn our way in the head. And that's just, you know, like I said, because I sat there and I read this like, man, Old Testament, New Testament, they're not. But in the day, it all comes back to what? You know, Jesus. Anyway, that's what I learned. I share all that. So finally, Perez is translated as divided. The kingdom's going to be divided up. So from there, we get to verses 29 through 31, and we see the fulfillment right here. Verse 29, I found this pretty interesting. They then commanded Belshazzar that they clothe Daniel with the scarlet and put a chain of gold around his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So we find it right there. You know, verse 29 kind of repeats, goes back all the way up to verse, the reason why our Belshazzar keeps his word and rewards Daniel, but why are these basically useless? Well, he gives them to him, and then the kingdom falls in about a few hours later. And so we see that, and I think, I know our book talks about this. It says in verse 30, in that night. And, in that night, it says Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain. So, and it talks about Ecclesiastes 9 and 12 and Psalm 27, and somebody would get Ecclesiastes 9 and 12 for me. And I'll get Psalm 27 and 1.
For man also knoweth not his time, as the fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as the birds that are caught in the snare. So are the sons of man snared in an evil time, when it falleth upon suddenly upon them.
All right, and then probably should miscopy that because that doesn't seem to fit right. But yeah, let's stay with that. What's that say? We don't know the time of day, do we? Same thing with Belshazzar. He was warned, and he was slain that night. And I think that's something there. 27 Psalms 27:1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life, and whom shall I be afraid? So that's kind of, I guess, right there. You know, you go from we don't ever know, and not knowing what each day holds for us. But but Psalm 27:1 kind of gives us the solution for that. We don't need to go with fear of that unknown, but just knowing, but just being knowing God. The Lord is my strength and my life, and of whom shall I be afraid? So when the Lord is the strength of your life, you got nothing else to worry about. So as we get to it, at the end of what does this chapter teach us about how Daniel reacted to decades of being under Babylonian influence? Did Daniel waver? No. Held strong, didn't he? What's the lesson that we get here? I got to close it out. I won't have time to get to the major themes down there. But okay, think of one. Well, sum up that question right there with Daniel.
He always stayed strong in his relationship with God. He never, gave in like just because everybody else was doing this and he didn't give in. He stayed with his relationship with God.
You think it could have been easy for him to fall into the culture, the Babylonian culture? I mean, for a normal person.
It's less fractious if you follow the crowd, but sometimes you have to
Exactly.
stay
That's the great point right there. I think that's the one of the lessons here is no matter what our things are rolling. It's easy to follow God when things are rolling. I mean, you have to say if you're in captivity like Daniel, that'd be pretty tough, wouldn't it? So I think that's the thing there that we're that we see. So, like I said, to follow up on this, and I was going to get into this if I had time, just to sum it up, but the last part of this on page 143 through 145 right there, I think there's some good stuff in the book. Why do human leaders have issues with pride? How can we avoid these downfalls? Are there idols today that we need to be wary of? And I think there's quite, and then, what are some possible enticements the world has to, all those things there probably would have been there for Daniel, but he held true. He held true to who he was and his faith in God. So, more reading Daniel right here, pretty good role model for us to follow right here as we go through our walk. Anybody else got anything? All right. Now I'll put y'all out of your misery where you don't have to hear me anymore. Let's close with a word of prayer. Lord, again, we're just thankful for this day. Thankful for many blessings. Thankful for each and every person here. Lord, we're thankful for Daniel's example. And Lord, we just ask that we remember that when we are going through tough times, that we can remember how Daniel stayed firm and true to your truths, Lord. And Lord, as we walk each day as we're in this world, that we'll just carry those same type of commitments with us, Lord, and not fall into the trap of conforming. And Lord, just be with us and go through our worship service. Be Brother Nathan brings our message. Be with those who may not be able to be here for whatever reason, Lord. And Lord, we just ask all these things for you to forgive us where we feel that. Ask these